Welcome back, folks. Today we're taking a look at Manor Lords. Over the past 2 weeks or so, I had a chance to play it. Keep in mind that Hooded Horse did provide me with a review copy of the game. Manor Lords is a new early access strategy city builder developed by Slavic Magic that features in-depth city building, large-scale tactical battles, and complex economic and social simulations. Rule your lands as a medieval lord. The seasons pass, the weather changes, and cities rise and fall as it is described on their Steam page. But how well does it play? Let's find out. So one of the first things you do in the game is create your house crest and select how your lord, or well, how you will look like from selected avatars to where you proceed to select what sort of a game you want. From relaxed scenarios that focuses more on building and maintaining your city, to more aggressive scenarios that focus conquest or well trying to beat your opponent on the map. They can be reactive or aggressive, as well as, meaning that they will either attack you if you attack them first, or ultimately go to war with you as well. And once the game begins, you can see a relatively big map that is divided into regions, and as you can see, you have claimed and unclaimed regions. Unclaimed regions usually have bandits that you have to fight unless you want them stealing your supplies. By claiming those regions, you get the ability to build another town and use its resources, and keep in mind that every single region will have different resource which is going to be in abundance. So as I said, each region of the map will have similar resources, but the difference comes in its abundance. So as you can see in my session, my starting region is rich in berries, which means I have to take that into account when I start building up and get those berries, as food or to sell. Sometimes you will have another resource in abundance in another session, which will result in utilizing those resources, like let's say animals or a certain ore, so your town will start developing differently because you want to focus on things which you have around you. And the game of Manor Lords begins as most strategies do. You play some starting buildings like woodcutter's camp, granary, storehouse, as well as homes for your families to live in, because if they stay outside, being that, well, you have weather and seasonal changes, they can potentially freeze, and well, your reputation or well, the actual happiness of the city goes down. Once you place a building, you have to assign a family to that so they can start working, and well, good thing about it is that once one or more families focuses on a certain task, they will also do some extra stuff, like for example sell some of those things on the market, make money, and so on. Besides that, each home you place, you can also enhance it by implementing different things like placing chickens, orchards that family living there will gather, sell on the market, and of course generate food and variety of that food for your town. Later on in those houses, you can also place various workshops that will use raw materials and turn them into either clothing, armor, weapons, or well, other finished products that you can export for a higher price or use to build up your city. Besides that, you also have to pay attention to resource management, meaning that things like animals or trees can all be cut down and disappear unless you reforest it or pay attention to animal hunting so they can always reproduce and maintain their numbers. You also put down fields that produce different cultures depending on what you selected. For example, I produce wheat that I later grind and turn into flour that is then taken to bakery to make bread. Of course, there is also flax, barley, which gives you different end result, again depending on what you want your town to produce and focus on. Reason for it is trading. It's one of the most important things to do in this game. So because you simply can't have infinite resources in your region, what you can do is import, export, or full trade each product or ingredient to make money. Because you need money to make stuff, and as I mentioned before, investing into houses where families live so they can produce additional stuff or turn raw materials into useful products. You need gold for that. So one of the things I do in my game is to, for example, import some raw materials, then make swords or bows or just different products from it, and then export that for a higher price, taking in the difference cut from it and ultimately making, let's say, 3 to 4 or even more gold every few minutes, and that's just from one trade. Now imagine you have 5 or 10 of them and all will have different materials or products which are going to sell. You also have to pay close attention to weather changes that can result in, let's say, your goods getting soaked if not stored properly, and season changes, which means you're, full year around. So in the spring, summer and fall you will gather resources, while during the winter you focus on having enough resources to last until spring, which is usually easy to do if you are well stocked, being that seasons are not particularly long and I didn't really have a problem with winter in this game. You also have a development tree that will give you certain bonuses depending on what you want to focus on in your city, so paying close attention to it is definitely recommended. And all of this ultimately goes towards happiness and rule of law because, well, by getting your reputation up, it will mean that more families will start coming in, and you need them because for every business, or well, most buildings, you have to assign at least one family that will focus on it. A building won't produce anything by itself. On the other side, you have to be making or buying equipment for your militia that is formed from the number of people living in your town, mostly men. Militia can be raised to either attack bandits, claim regions, or defend yourself against invading force from your AI enemy, depending of course if you selected in settings for them to attack you. But don't think it goes like Mount & Blade where you actively fight yourself, that doesn't happen. And another feature which goes great with it is the ability to actually walk around your town or the region, and to be honest, it feels great to just see it from another perspective, especially when it's fully built up and you also get a good feeling of how you design the city and roads. And yes, you can place roads to connect from one building to another to make it easier and faster for people to get there. Now, graphically wise, this game is gorgeous, both from top-down and third-person perspective. I really like design and color palette. Weather effects look really nice and detail-wise as well. No matter how much you zoom in with the camera, each building was designed with care and detail in mind. Also, it's really cool to look at your villagers doing stuff because they do have animations to go along with, either working, selling stuff on the market, transporting goods, and so on. Sound design and music as well is spot on to really capture the feeling of a medieval village, so no complaints on that side as well. Optimization and framerate wise, I didn't really have a problem with this, being it's an Unreal Engine 4 game. It holds itself really nicely, but of course it will still push your PC a bit because all of the effects and things happening on the screen. And I won't lie, as I was playing there was a big smile on my face because this game reminded me of games I used to play growing up. You see, strategies, castle builders and similar games were my bread and butter. Age of Empires, Age of Mythology, Rise of Nations, StarCraft, Warcraft, Europa Universalis, and so on and on. I can list these games until tomorrow. And from newer releases, I would say this reminded me of Banished, another city builder I really enjoyed playing a few years ago. So to have this game released today is amazing and definitely much needed, along with Frostpunk 2, which is also coming out this year I believe, and I'm very excited about it as well. Overall, Manor Lords is a fantastic title that I think has a very nice future ahead of it. Testament to it is also more than 150,000 concurrent players on Steam and a very positive review on, Steam itself, and I agree with them. Keep in mind that this game is in early access, and I noticed that after a while, once you're kind of fully built up, you can definitely see that it will benefit greatly from additional features, but even with what it has now, I can recommend it if you like strategies and want to play a classic title that will remind you of a lot of games you used to play 10 or 20 years ago. There is also quite a bit of micromanaging in the game that at first can be a bit complicated if you never played these games before. If you did, you will have a much easier time to pick up on certain details and how things should be developed. This is not actions per minute kind of a strategy, but rather one which you take step by step to really make sure your town is developing properly, but it's definitely not an easy game. My recommendation is to fail in the first few games. It's the best way to learn and see, okay, what mistakes I made and how can I streamline it better. Starting a new game or, well, going from start is not annoying because you get back to your original city size fairly quickly since you get better at the game itself. Also, it's insane that Manor Lords is primarily designed by one person who also, as I heard, hires freelancers around certain development objectives, but overall was the main driving force behind the game. Although, of course, he's now partnered with a publisher, so I am not sure at this point how many people work in his company. Now, of course, again, this title is in early access, meaning that new features and segments are on the way. But as it is with every early access game, you take a risk for it. But to be honest, developers showed a huge amount of passion towards this project, and I hope a huge influx of money from sales will result in this game expanding and becoming something really special. 2024 was very good for gamers, not just from the amount of titles, but variety in it as well. And I'm always happy to see a positive story from a small dev or a small team that creates new experiences for people to immerse themselves in. Good A or AA games deserve to be noticed, and I'm glad that people do notice and reward games that want to be games rather than just a product, which is very nice to see. So overall, I do recommend Manor Lords, even in its early access form, but of course you can wait as well to see how this game is going to develop further before making that purchase. But overall, it's one of the better releases this year, and as a strategy enjoyer, this is great news. And this is everything for today. Thank you for watching. Tell me down below in the comments, what do you think about this game, both positive or negative? And if you enjoyed this review, consider clicking that like and subscribe button for more videos, and huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. This is LKM signing out, and stay classy everyone. Bye bye.